to the NIDA costume information session. We have with us today, I am Annette Ribbons, head of the costume course, and I have with me today Bethany Hewitt, who is a third year costume student who's available to answer some of your questions, and her and I will have a bit of a chat as well about her time on the course. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today, the Bidjigal and Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also pay my respects to any of you out there who are Indigenous. So the format of this session will be a bit of, conversation between myself and Beth, and so that you get a bit of perspective from a student's idea of what it's like to be a student at NIDA. But please put your questions into the chat at any time, and we will get to those questions as we go. So we have in the background Jay and Naomi, who will be filtering those questions through to me, and Naomi will also be answering questions about the scholarships and fees and certain questions that like that, and otherwise I will answer the very course specific questions myself, or as I say, Bethany. So please, anytime you think of a question, just start typing it in, and hopefully you'll get the information from today that you are seeking. I know that you're all either contemplating or maybe started an application for the course, and I imagine a lot of questions will be related to that at this point. So just as an overview, it is a two-staged application that we're doing this year, which if you've applied previously, you'll know is a bit different from what we've done before. So the first stage of the application, we ask you to create a portfolio of your work, which should be no more than 15 pages long, and that's really showing your best work. It can include pieces of art like drawings or craft sort of things, maybe some crochet or knitting or some pottery or all sorts of things. It can be outside of the purely sewing skills area. And just to give us a bit of a broad perspective, I suppose, of your interests, as well as, of course, some very significant pieces that you've made and that you're particularly proud of. So those pieces that you choose that are your favourites, if you like, or the ones that you're most proud of, then we like to see a bit more detail of those pieces so that we can see the sort of work that you do. And also we have asked you to make a garment, and on the website you'll see links to options of patterns that exist that you can either download or get from other retailers, and we ask you to make a garment which you also send to us along with a USB copy of your portfolio. With those two elements and the garment, we like you to stick to the pattern, the shapes of the patterns, but interpret it in terms of how you might treat the fabric or what you might use as fabric. We sort of leave that to your interpretation. And we're interested also in how you might then style that garment onto the person that you made it for. Be a bit creative with that, I would suggest. And so if you send the USB of your portfolio and the garment that you've made to NIDA before the 30th of September, we will then select applicants to go through to the next round which will be the interview round of the process. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what the process is. The interviews will be online, 30-minute interviews, and we'll also send you a link to a short written response that we would like you to complete before the interview date. So Bethany, for the thinking back, you're now in third year, but thinking back to when you were thinking about applying for NIDA and going through this process of putting together a portfolio, how did you approach it?
I had a interesting experience because I knew I'd be applying for a couple years before I could actually apply, because I came straight from high school, and I realized that this is what I wanted to do a couple years before leaving high school. So I actually created pieces with the expectation that I would be putting them in a portfolio for NIDA. So yeah, I learned how to sew and everything once I realized that I wanted to get into NIDA. So yeah, a bit different than most people. Yeah.
But you'd obviously decided that costume was the focus of your interest.
Yeah. I sort of fell in love with costume through cosplay, and then that led me to NIDA through Supernova. Actually, is where I found out NIDA had a costume course.
Right.
And went to the panel, and yeah.
Great. Yes, we do have a lot of people from the cosplay community who apply for the course, and quite a lot who end up in the course as well. So there's quite a lot of you amongst the costume group who are cosplayers, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. There's usually, I think usually we're the majority of each of the classes. Not all of us, but quite a fair few.
Yeah. And I think you often manage to convert some of the others as well.
We try our best.
So I've got a question here. How often do costume students participate in the productions? Well, the answer to that is twice a year. Well, costume students are involved in all the main production seasons, which is twice a year. So we do a season in May and another one in October, and costume students are involved in that at every level. So in first year, students work as costume assistants, helping get the costumes together, do alterations, and maybe do some art finishing on the costumes for the production. And that is most afternoons for about 5 weeks. And they also make one outfit for a production during that time. In second year, so that's twice a year they do that on different productions. And then in second year, they're making one significant piece for each of those two productions. One is a menswear jacket, and the other can be anything that comes up in the designs that's relatively complex. And in third year, the third years are supervisors in those productions. So they manage a small team who organise all the costumes for the production. So we're doing 4 productions at a time, and so each of our third year students is put onto one of those productions as a supervisor, and sometimes we have 2 supervisors. If it's a big production, we will divide that role. And also in second year, there is an extra show called the Festival of Emerging Artists, where just the second years do a smaller supervision role. It's a short, sharp pre-production period of 2 weeks, and then the show runs for just a week. and that's just the second years that work on that. So there's quite a very big involvement in the productions. Naomi, you might be able to, sorry, not Naomi, Bethany, you might be able to talk about your recent production supervision role.
Oh yeah, so recently I worked on a production called Perfect Stranger, which was written by Hilary Bell and directed by Kate Champion. Yeah, it was quite a big show, as in there was a lot of costumes. I think there was only one character that didn't change at all. Everyone else had at least 4 costumes. And I co-supervised that with a classmate of mine, Siobhan. And yeah, we had quite an interesting experience with very different characters, and we had a great, I got very lucky and had a fantastic designer. Yeah, and we had a great time.
So the designers, just to make it clear, the designers on these productions are from the design course. So third year designers were doing these productions. You were managing about, what would it be, about 50 costumes or so?
Oh,
you never added them up.
We did at one point, but I've blanked it out. For the main cast, I was managing about 20 costumes, but then we had musical theatre students who were also a part of it, which I was doing their costumes as well. There was a lot.
There was a lot. And do you just want to explain to those who may not have seen this production the complexity of the staging as well, which added a lot to your role?
Yeah, so it was quite a unique show because in the show, the main character is constantly moving. And so the designers had quite a challenge in trying to figure out how they could create a show where the actors don't stop. So their solution to that was they would put the audience on a revolve, which it was quite a fun experience, a bit like a roller coaster, so just going around and around. But logistically, it was quite interesting because instead of your usual plot would be like stage right, stage left, but there was no one side. It was constantly moving around. So it was trying to figure out where everything could happen, where all the changes would happen, because there was quite a few quick changes in it as well, while the stage was constantly moving. So where could we do that? Where could our girls, where could our costume students hide backstage behind the revolve to do these changes? Yeah, so logistically it was quite a challenge, but they did so well, and yeah, turned out really well. Yes,
you all worked through it and worked it out very well, I think. It's good. And you also had a costume make for that production. Do you want to explain what that was?
Yeah, so for this costume make, there wasn't actually a lot of sewing in it, which I volunteered to do this, and I was quite happy to do this costume because it was different than most of the costumes we do. I made a donkey, so the costume maker had to carve out the donkey head and then create a mask from that, which the actor could wear. Yeah, and sort of emote because it was meant to be a very sad donkey. Yeah, it was quite an interesting experience.
I do have an image of that donkey. If I can share my screen, I will try. Actually, this is something that I haven't tried this on Teams before. Screen window. Here we are. Are you able to see that? There's the donkey on stage.
He was my favourite character, though I think I was biased.
He was very cute, and you had to coordinate with props to make the. They made the stilts and that element of the donkey as well, didn't they?
Yeah. So Zach in props, she made those. Yeah, no, that was quite an interesting experience as well, because we don't often collaborate with props in making a one costume. Usually we collaborate for the shows, but for the same costume, not usually. So that was quite a good experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that demonstrates that that was an option that you chose to attempt that donkey. And so within the costume area, we do encourage students to extend themselves if they're interested into, you know, particularly into sort of prop costume area. So yeah, that was a good exercise. So I have another question. How does COVID affect the teaching sessions, especially if you have to discuss complicated topics like cutting, pattern making, and access to equipment and machines? So this is the second time, obviously, that we have been in a COVID lockdown in Sydney. And what we have done is we sent our students away with mannequins to work on and made sure that everyone had a machine at home, and we have lent them some of our domestic machines as well if they haven't got them. So that, and also sent the students home with materials or posted materials to them, which we're sort of constantly doing as the lockdown extends. And so just as an aside, we do supply all the materials to the students for their time whilst they're at NIDA. And so obviously we will continue to do that during lockdown. So the classes are then recorded. Some classes are pre-recorded. Marcia Liddon, our flat pattern making teacher, is now getting very good at recording her process. And so those are pre-records that the students can stop and start and work through at their own pace. And to back that up, we also have sessions where the teacher is there available to ask questions live at points through that process, so when the students are working. So we are trying to, you know, manage that situation, the COVID situation, and in some circumstances where we, particularly when it comes to fitting of things, last year we were able to organise so that we had very limited groups of people coming in to the building to do fittings in very controlled environments, or maybe other activities that they couldn't do at home. So NIDA has agreed to allow a small number of people, as I say, in a very controlled way, which includes having a COVID test before you arrive in the building, to allow some activities to continue on site. And that has enabled us to continue a lot of the learning. We have had to move some projects around to keep things going, but we're managing so far. And last year, well, Bethany might have an opinion, but I think we got through the COVID situation last year as well. Do you want to speak to last year and perhaps where you're at this year as well, Beth?
Yeah, last year I was quite fortunate because in second year we've already learned a lot of those base skills like cutting and draping and pattern making and stuff. So a lot of the teaching that was done was based on knowledge that we already had. Although I'm not sure how it was for our current second years when they were having to learn all that stuff in lockdown, but I imagine it was a bit more difficult than in second year. But yeah, one of the classes that we were doing at that time was tailoring, which is that was the one which was quite technical and a lot of learning involved. And it was decided, we did a couple of classes in COVID, and then it was decided to move tailoring into the second semester, just because it wasn't as logistical to do it in that first semester. Yeah, so.
And currently,
at the moment in third year, we are working on our major works, which is a research project where we've chosen the topic. And so it's a lot of our own study and making. And some people definitely have a bit more of a challenge than others with that in terms of what they've chosen. Like I know one of my classmates, Ori, has chosen to do 3D printing, and NIDA's been very accommodating and have lent them a 3D printer to take home and do that. Yeah, so it's not too bad in third year currently. And then all our other classes are theory classes. So third year's looking pretty good for COVID right now.
Yes, and we have changed your presentation. So
yeah.
You usually present those research projects in a live theatre situation. Do you want to explain what we're doing this time?
Yeah, so this time we're recording them, so which makes them a little more accessible, not knowing whether people can come to the presentation or whether we'll even be out of lockdown at that time. So yeah, we'll be recording our presentation and our final works and stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to go into the building to do some filming in there. And NIDA's also been very accommodating during this lockdown at the moment. They've partnered with the smartphone film test, and they're doing classes on filming and editing, which will be very helpful for not just our project. I'm sure other courses are having the same issues, and yeah, so NIDA's been great with that.
Great, thank you. So another question, in the productions, are all costumes designs made from scratch, or is buying and altering already made items also used? So yes, we do all of those things. We buy things, we alter things, and we use stock. We have a huge store of costumes and props in Ultimo, and so we draw as much as we can from the stock that exists. We do also borrow sometimes from other companies as well, if we can. And then everything needs to be fitted and altered. So there is there's online shopping, there's op shopping if we can get out to those places, and as I say, rummaging through our store as well. So it depends on the production, how much is designed and made from scratch, and how much we might be able to use existing garments if it's a contemporary piece, then we might be able to use existing garments, but then we will always find things, I mean, it's part of our part of the course that the students make for productions as well. So we always pick the best bits out of the 4 productions that are exercises for our students to make from scratch. So it's a whole combination that we put together to create our productions. Another question, do our folios have to be in a particular format, e.g. A3, A4, PDF or PowerPoint, to put it on a USB? Well, on a USB, I guess, I don't think it matters whether it's A3 or A4, but, and PDF or PowerPoint is fine as well, as long as we can sort of flick through and see the, go through the portfolio, then the format doesn't matter too much. Do you know what percentage of graduates go on to work in the industry in costuming? The answer is pretty much 100%. I have already had inquiries from Furiosa, which is the next Mad Max film, asking who's available to come on industry placement for to help on their film, and I'm not releasing. We can't release anybody until closer to the end of the year, but the third years have placements as the last thing that they do in November, and over the last few years, most of those industry placements, which are 2 or 3 weeks long, have then turned into employment. So there is, fortunately, despite the COVID situation, there is a lot of work for our graduates in the particularly in the film and television world. So we're very lucky, we're very fortunate that that is the case, and we have, say, employers approaching us looking for people regularly. Now you've already done, so the students do an industry placement at the beginning of third year and another one at the end of third year. Beth, do you want to talk about your industry placement experience?
Yeah, so at the start of this year, I spent a few weeks at the Australian Opera working in their millinery department. Yeah, it was amazing. So we mainly worked on the show Anani, which was rented from La Scala. So it was a lot of learning how to fix hats. And Beck, who was my supervisor at the opera, she showed me how to make some hats for the show, because some Australian heads are bigger than Italian ones, and not all the hats fit. So they needed some bigger ones. So I replicated some hats from the Italian production and made them, which was a lot of fun, and I learnt a lot. Yeah.
As I understand it, because they were coming from Italy, quite a lot of the headwear got crushed as well on the way.
Yeah, so I think probably because of COVID, it was probably a bit of a rush, but the care in packaging wasn't the best, and especially the ensemble costumes and hats were quite damaged. So most of them we tried to salvage and fix. Some of them we just couldn't do anything for, and others we had to not use or remake. Yeah, so yeah, I find I learnt a lot from seeing how, because a lot of them were quite old, they were obviously pulled from the Scholars collection, which is very old. And it's really interesting to see how stuff's done and then how to fix that as well. I found, yeah, I learned so much from my time at the opera, and it was just an amazing environment. Yeah. And then during my last week there, once Anani was done and on stage, Elspeth and I, Elspeth's another classmate of mine who was also at the opera in the costume department. We were taught how to make wire open collars from Elizabethan open collars for one of their upcoming shows, which I'm not actually sure if it's happening anymore because of COVID, but yeah, so it was an amazing experience. Yeah.
Yes, that did sound like a good experience that you had there. And I guess that example just shows that even at the opera, they reuse costumes all the time. In fact, they revamp entire shows, and a lot of the process is about fitting and altering to the new cast.
And if you ever get a chance to have a tour of the Opera Centre, they've got huge stock out the back. It was just like hundreds of costumes out there. Yeah. Yeah,
that's right. So I have another question. How many students do you intake each year, and how many applicants do you have each year? So we take 6 students a year on the course, which is a bit of a shock to a lot of people. But it is a very small course, and the learning is very detailed. Because it's so small, then we're able to teach very bespoke costume making. So that means making and fitting an individual with guidance of a teacher. So within a class, so particularly in second year, the students tend to make for one another whole outfits, entire outfits, and then a big part of the learning is how to fit and make that garment really fit well onto that person. And that does take time, but it also requires small classes to achieve that. So that's how many students we take. In terms of number of applicants, we have anywhere between 30 and 40 applicants normally. We have had up to 60 in the past, and we don't know, we don't know where it's going to go this year, because we have dropped the application fee. So we sort of anticipate that might increase or encourage more people to give it a go. One thing I would say about that as well is that because the numbers are so small, we do have to turn away quite a number of people who we think are very good. And we do encourage those. So we do encourage people who've applied once but not made it through to reapply, especially if they've gained more experience or really, have determined that NIDA is the place they want to come. Then we do encourage people to come back. It's not as if it's a once-only opportunity. And we have many students who get in on their second or maybe even third time. One of our current third-year students applied 3 times, and we just felt that she wasn't ready on the first 2 occasions. But by the 3rd time, she'd really expanded her experience and her confidence, and she was ready. That really depends on the individual when they get to that point and when we feel that they're ready, because NIDA is slightly daunting place, I would say, and it can be that it's quite an intense, intimate environment, and so people have to be ready for that as well, ready to take it on. Would you say anything? You were young coming into the course. Would you say anything about that? How has it been from your perspective?
I think there's a lot of growing up to do. I had the unique experience of I'd already lived away from my parents during high school because I was at boarding school. So I was prepared already to not have to, I was already prepared to do stuff on my own, which I think is very hard for a lot of people coming out of high school. And I don't think I would have had it as easy if I didn't have that experience straight out. And they're long hours, so there's a lot of, you got to be prepared for it. And NIDA tells you every chance it gets that you're going to be working from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. some days, a lot of days. And in first year, some of us really did that. But it's also a chance for you to bond with your class a lot, those long days. And by second and third year, you sort of realize, okay, any chance that I get not to be here, I'm going to go home. Yeah. So, yeah,
Yes, we don't insist that people stay there until 11 at night. But what happens is there's homework from the classes, often to complete making things, and because what I didn't mention before is, which is around the numbers thing as well, we provide all our students with a work table, a sewing machine, and the mannequins that they require to do their job. And so it's easier often to the students to stay and do their homework at NIDA than it is to take everything home. So this does encourage a culture of late nights, and I'm not quite sure how much really gets done. But
I think that's as well, being young. From observing the other 2 year groups that are here, the younger ones tend to be the ones that stay, that haven't quite figured out that balance of, I'm going to get stuff done and go home. Because the majority of my class is older. So it's quite interesting because most of them would get their stuff done and go. And that was something that took me longer to figure out. Yeah, so I think that was, coming in older, you've got a bit more experience usually with that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Time management is a huge part of what we encourage and drill into our students, because it's a huge part of costume making, and most of our graduates will become freelance, which is another important point. So there's very few permanent jobs within the costume industry, and some people as freelancers work from home or out of their own workshop, and others go into a workshop that's maybe popped up for a film or something. But there is a lot of your own time management involved in costume making. And so, so that's something that we really try and instill in the students as we go along. I just have a question from someone. I'm volunteering in the wardrobe department and I want to include a reference from them in my application. Would a general reference be okay? Yes, that should be fine. Any work experience like that is fantastic, and would very much appreciate a reference from that organisation. That would be great. Would you also like to see previous school achievements and references in the portfolio? The latest. So whatever your latest achievements are, so if that's your school work, then or your school credits, then that's fine. or if you've done a previous degree or a diploma or something like that, then though that information would be great as well. Okay, so what you don't know what the next production is, do you? What did you work on, Beth, in first year? I don't remember.
I worked on Meat Eaters and Gods of Carnage.
Oh, that's right. And what were the key memories from those experiences?
Oh, they were both fun shows. Meat Eaters was a comedy, and so that was really fun because it got a little manic at times. It's sort of hard to explain. There was a scene where everything sort of gets ripped apart, and one of the actors is in dog fetish wear, and yeah, that was just, I always remember that scene because I'm standing in the corner while it's happening, waiting for him to come out to like get changed. Yeah, so I think that one was a really good memory.
It was a sort of destructive chaos scene, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But when we do destructive chaos scenes, they're very controlled.
Yeah.
And highly rehearsed.
They're probably the most rehearsed parts of shows because they have to be, everything has to happen exactly as it happens, otherwise it's potentially dangerous. And there was a couple of almost show stops and a couple of actual show stops where they had to stop it to make sure everyone was safe. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was my first show. There was a lot of learning on that one because none of us really knew what was happening. And I think now there's a lot more communication of what's actually going to happen between the first years who are going on to shows and the third years or teachers. And yeah, and my second show was really chill. It was Gods of Carnage, and the actors pretty much never came off except for like a couple of times. So I was just sitting in the back room, just chilling, doing other work when I could.
Yeah. So just to make it clear, your role is in first year is to do the maintenance on the show. So you're doing the laundry every night, putting the costumes back into the dressing rooms, and then working backstage as the show is running as well.
Yeah. Also fixing any costumes. I did a lot of press studs and buttons on that show.
Right.
That's what I remember most about it. Constantly having to change the shirt.
So that's really, in the industry, that will be a wardrobe maintenance role and a dresser's role. Yeah. So the idea of the course is that the students experience every level of costume department, so that when they come to being the supervisors, they understand what all the other roles are, so that they can direct the students in the younger years, and then hopefully take on supervision roles in the future if that's what they would like to do, or costume maker roles. But even as a costume maker, you have to understand how that garment is going to be used potentially on stage or in a film, and then the requirements of the action and the considerations that surround that, surround the use of that garment. So these are the sort of elements of costume making which differ perhaps from, you know, a pure fashion kind of course or something like that. So someone's asking, are there any requirements to have besides basic sewing and textile knowledge? There are no, well, the specific requirement is to have achieved year 12 or equivalent or above. But otherwise, I guess we're also looking for that demonstrate a demonstration of collaboration, that you have participated in some form of collaborative process previously, not necessarily in terms of performance, but it's very important that costume making is a collaborative process because you have to deal particularly with the designer, but also with the actors, of course, and then when we get into production with all the technical team and the director, and there's a lot of people involved that you have to work with and interact with. So there's not specific requirements, if you like, but just need to be aware that if you have had collaborative experiences, it's really good to acknowledge that. If it might be a school production that you've worked on, it might be volunteering that you've done for the local performance group, it might be a little film that you've made with some people where you were, the costume support or something like that. So any of those experiences are really good to let us know about. So we have just over 10 minutes left. Are there any more questions that people desperately want to get in before we leave? I don't want you to run out of time for your questions if you have them. So Beth, what would be your what's the thing that you have experienced whilst you've been at NIDA that you were least expecting?
There's subjects and there's subjects that I didn't think I would be interested in, like costume history and supervising, which I really didn't think would be for me until I did them at NIDA, and now I absolutely love costume history. It's one of my favorite subjects. And supervising, I really love doing that, and I didn't think that would be something I would like doing, and now it's something I'm considering. Yeah, so it's really surprising what has stuck out, and yeah.
What is it about supervising that you like?
I'm not sure. I think while I've been at NIDA, I found the whole organisational side has become a lot more interesting, and I think being able to do that and work with a designer to see the show actually come to life through these costumes, from a sketch to actually seeing them realised, I think that's really cool, even if you're not the one doing the sewing per se. Yeah,
I think this is why we kind of make sure that all our students have a supervision experience. Many people think, oh no, I don't want to be a supervisor, but actually once you've done it, there is a great satisfaction, I think, out of playing that role and really being a key player in getting the performance onto stage, or as I say, we focus on potential film outcomes as well. and we're likely to be doing more than that, more of that. I mean, last year you weren't really part of the digital festival, were you? Or you made something for it?
I made a dress for a pox on both your houses. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a live streamed show that we did, but there were, in the digital season last year, we had a number of different formats. Some were pre-filmed, some were zoomed live. So it was, yeah, we mix up the format, but from a costume perspective, we're still making costumes for whatever the style of performance is, and the management of that becomes a little bit different depending on what the genre is. So are applicants notified if they are successful? Yes, we'll definitely be notifying you at each stage. So we'll notify you after the first round if you're successful or not, and of course the final, after the interviews, we will make our final selection and notify everybody after that point, which will be in early December. All right, so we've got, so for the rest of the year, Bethany, you have, after you finish your research projects, you have one more production season to go, and then an exhibition to mount of your work, and then your final industry placement.
Yeah, it's coming up fast. Yeah, I'm in the middle of the research project at the moment. Looking forward to finishing that, and then, yeah, we're sort of starting to see the preliminary designs and everything for the production season that's coming up.
Yeah, next week you'll be seeing those.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see those soon. Yeah, so that will be interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. And then, yeah, the exhibition will be, so for the exhibition, we put together a collection of our best work from over the 3 years at NIDA, and we're putting that on with the props department. And so that will, if all goes according to plan with COVID, it will be in the foyer at NIDA. Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you'll be off and, well, placement for a few weeks and then off into the industry.
Yeah, the big scary industry.
You'll be fine.
Fingers crossed. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Are you in touch with any of the graduates from last year or previous years?
I occasionally talk to Alakoy because her roommate's at NIDA still, so I see her quite often. Other than that, not really. Yeah.
And Alakoy's been busy since she left last year, hasn't she?
Oh yeah, very busy. She's done so well for herself. Yeah.
She went on to Thor. Was she on 3,000 Years of Longing as well? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think she was. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's been on a couple of films. Yeah, so she has been very busy as far as I can tell. So someone's asking how much of the course is theory, how much is practical and hands-on. So now I'm trying to break that down. Would you say about it probably varies through the years. A quarter to maybe a quarter is theory.
I'd say that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps not a quarter of the time, but a quarter of the credits. It depends, because in all our projects, in all our making projects, there is also research. There's research behind all the projects that the practical projects that we do as well. So it's hard to sort of break it down the middle exactly, but it's very practical, but we back it up with the theory as well. I would say. So just before we wrap up, want to say that if you have any further questions that you haven't asked today, please email them to applicants@nida.edu.au. And we will answer them as well as we can. And the application guide for costume is on the BFA costume page of the NIDA website. So hopefully you have all been able to have a good look at that already, and please just keep referring to that. There is a lot of information there. There are videos there. And so you should be able to have most of your future questions answered by that. Okay, so I think, so thank you everybody. Thank you, Beth, for coming on, and looking forward to your applications. Thank you. Bye.